Good morning. Here we are in one more meeting, Technique and Technology in Cena Aberta YouTube channel. It's an honor and a pleasure to have our guests here with us. Our transmission is from Cacilda Becker Theater in São Paulo, and that was we were allowed to use it thanks to São Paulo municipality. We have our streaming support team here on stage, some things going on, preparing to film a documentary about the technicians. And before anything, I want to thank you for the availability, Yara Souza from Belém do Pará. She's a professor. She will introduce herself better. Manolis, who is in Athens, setting up a play, also Hedra, and Yuri. A message for all of you. I'm wearing a mask because I'm close to some people here. There are two channels. We have YouTube in English and YouTube in Portuguese. If you want to be there in English, you just have to choose for that. So you are very welcome. And this afternoon at 2 o'clock in Brazil, we have a workshop by Gonçalo Sodi from Canada. He is the founder of Hub Studio. It's a multidisciplinary collective gathering that organizes installations, and he provides support for spectacles and urban settings. And tomorrow we have the workshop at 2 o'clock by Yara Souza. Gonçalo's is called Technology Applied. Oh, I forgot it. Can you remember, Yara? Help me out. Technology applied to the scene, I think, something like that. And Yara's is called Gambiarra as a creative potential, which is a way to cobble something. That's what Gambiarra is. And thank you for everybody here. I'll be monitoring. If you want to ask something in YouTube chat, I'll write down and I'll ask the panel. Thank you so much for your presence here. It's a huge pleasure to be here talking about our work and everything that is included in our work. Thank you. Good morning. It's a huge pleasure to be here sharing this panel with these three fantastic creators and this whole team from Brasil Cena Aberta. I want to thank you for the invitation, the opportunity of sitting here to talk with everybody. Our talk today, our panel is called Chaos, Magic, and Poison. We have our guests, as Andrea said, Hedra, Manolis, and Yuri. And I will introduce them a little bit for you. And when I open, if they want to add something, they will. Hedra is sound designer, musicist. She works with lighting. She is the technical director of plays. She has been working since 1995 with Cena Group, a dancing company, participating on other productions. With Cena and other partnerships where Brazilian artist has developed a peculiar work in scenic arts where light, sound, and projection create drama and extend the action of the performance. Since 2017, she has created soundtracks for feature movies and short movies. Our next guest is Manolis. He is the technical director of Dimitris Papaionou company from Greece. He was born in Athens in 1981. He grew in an area close to a mountain where from the beginning he was interested by physics and mechanics. He studied mechanical engineer in Thessaloniki. After finishing his background, he took stunt and dance classes. And then he started with lighting, scenography, and theater as a whole. He studied movies, what was closer to lighting in Athens. He has done 2 short movies as director. For the last 11 years, his most important activity is technical direction for different companies and artists. For the last 5 years, he's the technical director for the creations of Dimitris Papagenou company. Yuri is a technician from Assets and Services Management at SESC São Paulo, Brazil. He has been working with lighting since 2003, has worked with projects for dance, circus, theater, and music. As technician, he has been working for more than 7 years at SESC Pinheiro, with much experience in setting up national, international plays or spectacles. He has working with companies in France, Berlin Assemblage in Germany, and many works by Robert Wilson. Currently, he has been working in projects of acquisition, updating, and modernization of theaters by SESC São Paulo. Our panel has this huge question today. We will be talking about how can we produce a play or whatever, and how do we go about in the world? How do we solve, technically speaking, how do we readapt to diverse spaces? Something that was very happy about this panel is that all the technicians who are here involved, all the artists, scene artists, they have works of scenography that is quite organic, very close to the public. So it's a space of the scene. It's a space that you cannot present of any element. So let's go to our question, which is how much do the different cultures, cultural differences and resources and norms will interfere in the process and may really frame the circulation of a setting that intends to go about in the world? Talking about resources and cultural aspects, what will be hindrances in our creation space? And then we start with Hedra. She's going to have 20 minutes, and I will be here checking time. Welcome, Hedra. Hi, Yara, Yuri, Manolis. Thank you for the invitation. Especially Andrea Ball, who commended me to be here. I'm quite shy, so I usually will not accept this type of invitation. It's where we have to have our voice heard. I wanted to ask you to say something very quickly. Our technicians are in this chaotic situation. Everybody is swimming against the flow. So I wanted to ask municipalities and states to pay attention to Aldir Blanc law. Please pay. Here in Florianopolis, it's been difficult. It has been very bureaucratic. It's been difficult to understand that technicians also work for culture, and sometimes they're not used to make projects. I just wanted to make this cry for empathy. We are all in this difficult situation. Everybody is, but to give special attention because this resource exists. It's difficult to have a resource and not look at it with empathy. So this money is there, so it should reach people who really need it. This is what I am crying for. And I want to say that understanding how precarious it is, first you have to understand privilege. Myself, I live in the southern part of Brazil. I was trained here, south and southeast. First we have to understand Brazil inside, and then we have to go outside. We who live in the south and southeast, we live in privileged states if you compare to the rest of Brazil in terms of equipment, access, and much has changed. But not understanding that you are on that place and your background comes based on this privilege, which is where you are formed, because the imaginary of what's possible, what you want to construct as spectacle has to do with what you had access to on your first incursions on it. So your imaginary is quite controlled by what you could do in the beginning of your career. So to have to understand this is very important. And when you go out of your place, you have to have this understood. When you reach a place, understanding that you are privileged, this is constructed by experience. So when people come and using a tape, just a cheap tape, you think, how come? And then you understand that you come from that other place. And you not only have to understand, you may have two options. Either you may carry your whole setting 100%, and then you travel with everything and you set it up in my fantasy place that's totally faithful to what I have proposed. Or if that's not possible, very quickly you have to understand the others. It's not just a matter of equipment and technical conditions. People are there, the way they think things, how they work, how they correlate with that. So you end up assembling technical knowledge with psychology. You go into a space that's not similar to the one you came from. You have to very quickly understand how you get to the best result within these new conditions that are offered to you. From my experience, always, if you do things from top down, it never works, because people who are on that place, they want for your work to work. So they do want it to really work, but sometimes they don't have enough resources to meet what you want. It's in time, it's in traveling that you end up understanding how to get close to the result. Where can I give in? Where can I change? What do I not want to give up? And how do I create conditions for that? Even in places that do not provide you with the conditions that are close to what you wanted. But this is learning, and it's sweet learning. But for that to happen, you have to think the whole show for that. If I am radical from the beginning and I say this can only happen like that, then you have to be strict on where you're going to present it and generate a structure for that. What cannot happen is to have this mismatch. I want this and I go to a place where I cannot have this. So I have this struggle and try to force it. And this is part of our talks. If you travel in Brazil, you mode, when you create, you are this is part of your character as creators, or of yourself, actually, understanding possibilities. But it's very nice. I love this process. Sometimes you are caught on the wrong foot and you create the ability of transforming things, and that demands generosity for some spaces and realities of the cultures that you visit. And also, at least from my experience, I never had the opportunity of working in a place where I would say, no, I don't need this money. I'm just going to present where they can meet my ideal conditions. This never happened. Sometimes I have nightmares that somebody will come and say, how much do you want to do this show? 10 million? Okay. For me, that's a nightmare, not a dream, because I wouldn't know how to deal with that. Well, I'm kidding. I would know, but it would put tension on my reality if somebody came and said, here you have this huge amount of money and do it as you want. But with generosity, you understand those places and you try to get the best out of them. I remember once the most different case that I faced was in Manaus, in the northern part of Brazil. And I said, we need lighting. And the guy came with his cables all messed up, and he would cut the cables, and he made this on spot. And you start thinking, oh goodness, how do I solve this? But then I transformed the whole space. I moved everything. We made what we had. We did what we had to do. I remember that day I got to the hotel with webs on my head. Literally, we had to clean the place. And then you start thinking, well, what did I give up in quality to present there? But sometimes you forget that the public that goes there never had a different experience from the setup that is there. So minimal transformation that you can take uh, to your show will tackle the public in a different way. So we have our expectation vis-a-vis small achievements where the public is going to see that place in a different way. So it's an exercise of generosity. How far can you give up or give in? And that will change with creation. You propose different things, and they accommodate. You try to take the best possible out of what you have, because we live on this between privilege and scarcity in our country. But in my opinion, we cannot just not go to some places because it's not the ideal place. I could not have 100% of what I wanted. And then you have to create those places of generosity and limits with your own work, but the work has to be able to allow that for you. And I also understand the choices. Like, I won't do it if so and so, but you have to be candid and say that you're just going to set it up in some place. And there's also the reverse. We that created within this scarcity, thinking about scarcity, when we go to a place where it's a dream place, what I learned, what I developed for myself is to bring to my hand. I created light plans that are more simple, where the equipment and everything could be held by those places in a closer attempt than its core.
And the operation is what's different. So sometimes I count less on the local team in terms of resources and assume more and and how the technician can create drama as well. So this is the way that I've been doing, and that's the secret of it. So I basically work with most pieces of equipment that I can so that I can have more control of everything, and all these gaps of scarcity and they are diminished somehow. But I mean, there are some advantages too. I was talking to some people at the university in Germany. I was talking about lighting, and they said, well, we don't touch the lights. There has to be a technician to do that. So we have also experimenting places amongst the precarity. So you're with friends and you kind of test things that in other places would not be feasible. So I think we end up developing really good things. We start to get things from what we have, and that's how I became also a lighting designer, because not many companies have room for you to be there for 2 to 3 months. Manolis just mentioned that in 10 days the lighting will be ready. We would never have 10 days to test lighting in theaters. So it's nothing that you have, it's nothing that you can test at home as well. So you're not able to do that either. So we kind of get used to these things. We try in the time frame that we have and different test places that we have, we try to make the most out of it. But it's kind of already part of our language, of our reality. And when we go abroad, we kind of try to maintain that. And I try to travel with the most possibilities possible so that the operations are pristine and that the pieces of equipment are kind of universal. So the things I requested, I'm going to find everywhere, and everything that I carry with me are the different pieces of programming and interaction and other methods. Thinking about those pieces of equipment as an extension of your body, so to speak. I cannot think about the technician as the guy that uh, just goes with the cue. Everyone with the equipment has a different way of rising the fader, for example. So there is a specificity to these bodies that are behind the equipment. So we have to think about that in terms of drama. Oh, I think that would be it so far. There's also the other issue, the small issue of women technicians in places. So 20 years ago, first time I went abroad in Portugal, it was really hard. Guys were very, very misogynist, so people from the technical wouldn't talk to me. A lot has changed in Brazil as well, but besides the precarity, we have the bias. So girls, women, we still have that extra step to reach a result. But I think the feminist movement is really beautiful. It's very powerful. A lot of people are getting together, and inch by inch, we are able to change the reality so that our language gets to where we envisioned at first, to turn our wishes into reality, really. So that would be it for starters. It's so interesting that you're mentioning the presence of women in the backstage, really, because in my experience, for example, I had to learn everything because everything that had to be explained twice or reinforced because it looks like nobody hears. It looks like there's a general deafness because of the misogynism in the backstage. I think it has. Thank God it's changing now. Eliezer on our YouTube chat, he's saying that he agrees, but I think it's a two-way road. Sometimes you get to a place, you understand that everything you requested is there, and then you get a surprise because not everything is there. It's a comment that we have seen from Eliezer on the YouTube chat. Hedra, you still have 4 minutes if you would like to comment on what Eliezer mentioned. Yeah, there are several layers of negotiation, so to speak. So it's the list of equipment that you sent. There's the production team that negotiated that. There's the production team that negotiated the event. There are the promises, the vendors that sometimes do not tell the whole story. Um, there are bids going on, and instead of hiring a sound company, they hire a catering company that contracted other vendors. So you have several layers, and it's one thing to get someplace and the person say to you, well, I've never heard of that piece of equipment, or I don't know what is that, or you cannot find this here. So you can either accept that impossibility, but there's also kind of a deceit, and you get there and it's some sort of, it's a production issue. So there are places where you cannot find that type of linoleum floor. You will have vinyl floor, for example, and then you have to quickly understand if that's a local issue and you kind of accepted to do that, and that had already been discussed, or is it something that was promised and you got something else. So those are different things. So I was mentioning the cultural thing. You choose to bring your show to places that do not have all the resources, but you think it is still important to bring the show to that place to have an exchange. If you do not ever go to those places, so where do we end? I think it's important to kind of assume that and think, where is it important to bring our place, or else we'll be living in a bubble with people and places all separated. So you have to weigh those choices, because sometimes you just go and get no fee. It's important for us to be there. It's important for them for us to be there. Even with poor resources, you have so much, you want to do that. So you have that person just, slicing pineapple in your dressing room and just giving everything that they have. So you feel that you really should be there at that moment. So it's really important to weigh the choices. I want to go there. I'm not going to have all the resources that I have, but that's kind of beautiful as well. So it's different. If you do not have your equipment because there are no resources, or a place that you did not get even if you requested. And then when you choose to be there, even knowing it's an ethical issue, and that makes me feel good. Thank you, Hedra. We have a few questions on the YouTube chat, but we can leave those to the end so that everybody can have a chance to reply. So moving on to Manolis now. We've already introduced him at the beginning of this presentation. So Manolis, the floor is yours.
Hello, I hope you hear me well. I'm very happy that I'm attending. I'm honored that you called me into this meeting. Today is a difficult day for me. Because of COVID delays, it's our first day in the theater for a new show. So I have a lot of things on my mind, but anyway. I think Yara introduced me very well. I don't have to add more things. I grew up in Athens, where I was born also. I studied mechanical engineering and cinematography. I've worked in several fields like lighting design, construction, production, rigging, camera, grip, and I have some performing experience too. This all-round experience was very helpful throughout my job in every field, because having being both sides of having a better idea of the whole stuff and how you can react and what people need and what technicians have to have as a feedback and all that stuff. I've worked very much with artists that materials have a very significant part in their artistic result. That make my work a bit more difficult because of the need of research and for tests, and also, of course, when you have tests, you have there are inevitably errors in the process. But this is sometimes a very good thing because through some errors, very nice happens. Very nice ideas may come, or very nice things can happen. But this also made the work more interesting because you take more part in the artistical result, in the creation. So since 2011, I'm mainly working as a technical director with theater and dance groups touring around Europe and overseas. There have been times that I was the only technician of the team. Also times that I was the only technician in the theater. That happened too. But also mostly with big teams from our side and from the venue side too. So the last 5 years I'm working with Dimitris Papaioannou. He's a very talented visual artist and choreographer. At first I started working with him in a ready-made piece that we just toured together around Europe. Also, we came in Brazil with that. And then we started with a fresh new from scratch work. Now every artist has a different way to approaching his work and organize it. Dimitris has three parts. First, he's doing a workshop with some with dancers and performers from previous shows, where it's a period of research of materials, images, and choreography too. This is a very interesting part because we're searching for materials. Actually, we're making tests and researches and brainstorming, and this is a very, very important, the most important part, because communication is very, very important in all our work, in every field, and the comprehension of each other, comprehension between the technical team and the artistic team. So, because taking us much time as needed to understand what the artist wants to achieve, um, can save actually a lot of time in the end. Also, during this period, being present and giving a solution into ideas that the artist can have is may move the work into a different level at that point. After that is the synthesis part. So we put them all together. Now everything, it's the period that everything must work fine. And so fine as to give you the confidence that they will be working after 2 years of tour and all around the world and transportation and all the stuff. Also, it's a time where you have to take in mind the safety rules and standards, and you have to put into application during the construction. Now there are a lot of them. When you have a lot of materials into a show, you have to really make a very good. You have to take into account a lot of aspects like durability. How easy is to find it again, to source it again if it's destroyed? How easy it is to handle? And also it's the point where you have to choose if it is easier to source some of the stuff abroad or to carry with you. Also, this is a very good point where you research about the rules of the countries where you are supposed to go affect your materials and the way of treating things. Especially if you have organic materials, that there's an issue between moving through continents. This is important about sourcing stuff and that maybe you choose a different material, so you make your life easier when you're abroad. After that, we make run-throughs. So it's as if you have everything ready, you have a show going on, and you do it again and again, and there's only room for final adjustments and organizing the packing of how you pack up and how you transport. This is very important because you can save a lot of accidents with a good packing. Also, in this kind of projection with a lot of materials, budget is a big issue. And it's a good idea dividing your budget in parts for test, constructions, and finalizing. It's also a very good idea to calculate your consumables and the parts that you have to reconstruct every now and then. A very good also tool for this production is putting deadlines, but putting realistic deadlines, because they help you keeping a good pace in the production and also gives you early alerts if something is not going very well. So now, during international production that is about to travel around the world, some extra things must be taken into consideration, like adaptability. So as also Hydra tells, you have to achieve the same result in completely different places, with different people, and maybe with different materials. But adaptability, I believe, is something that you can organize in sort of. You must always have in mind that everything must be achieved in different circumstances. And trying to do that is with using materials that are common as much as possible, so you can source easily, and using solutions that are simple as possible and can be reproduced easily with safety and precision. Also, maybe that there might be occasions that you have to choose between a perfect result that is very difficult to reproduce, or another result that is a bit of a lower value, but you can reproduce it with great precision. It's now also thinking out of the box helped a lot. That you can have the same result with various ways. And this can be achieved by, as I said earlier, through communication with the artists. How you have to know as much as possible what is the purpose of every aspect of the show. Why is this happening this way, and how it came to end. How we came to end with this solution. Which is the path that every part of the show followed to end up the way it is. So very good communication between the artistic team and the technical team is very important. We as technicians will have to try and look through the eyes of the artists so that we can bring into reality what the imaginary that the artist has in his mind. So this way, if something goes wrong or there's no way to find exactly what was originally used, the process of replacing it to achieve the same result may have already been made through creation in the first tests and researches. So the important thing is to have in mind what must be achieved artistically and try to find solutions that are similar to the original and they have the same result actually. So also to this situation, what is most helpful is the communication with the local technical and production crew that they host you, even before arriving to the hosting venue. A good communication is a key element to overcome difficulties that arise in different cultures, environment, and way of thinking. We must always trust the technical team that hosts us to know their country, their theater, and the city market and the materials that can be found better than us in their own city and country. So sharing with them the desired result and making them participate in the process is the best way to achieve and to have to do what you want to do. You have to try to make the local crew part of your team and make them feel as collaborators into the final creation. So communication is a key element of our work. Research also is very important. And the more time spent in these two aspects, the more ready one can be for setbacks that may arise throughout the process. So working around the globe helped me get experience on how to communicate the specific features and needs of every show and setup. But mostly helped me realize that theater is one everywhere. Everywhere in the world, people working in theater try to create magic on stage somehow. It's as if all of us have attended the same school. We have the same codes, although we speak different languages. It has happened to me to succeed communicating with technicians without even speaking one word in the same language. Also, but cultural differences just make our work more interesting rather than difficult. Is something else, and every culture approaches things in different way. We should take advantage of working with different cultures so that we learn to approach our work in various ways. So I believe it's one of the best jobs in the world is theater, and we try to create this magic and communicate with each other. I don't know what else to say. That's it. I don't know if you have any questions.
Since you have 5 minutes, Andrea placed a comment here. Like, I remember the process with the materials of sonography for still life. Could you comment on that for us so that we can, so that you can use those 5 minutes?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question very well.
Chat. There is a comment that Andrea Ball wrote on the chat that says,
Yes.
I recall the process that we went through with the materials for the sonography for still life. Could you comment on that? Still life.
Yes, still life. It's the show that we did in Brazil. We, as I said before, materials were very important in every show of Dimitri's. So we try to make a very good to see what we can source in Brazil with communication with Andre and his technical team, but and also what's in order to achieve the desired result, what is very important to bring with us from Athens. I remember that we had a lot of things made in Brazil with through communication before we go, that we try to give the best description of what exactly we want to achieve, so that the team from Brazil can help us with that and give us the best ideas and result and ideas and the way of doing it there in their own city, in the theater. I remember that we have a construction team from Brazil that we tried to construct a lot of things that we couldn't bring from Greece. And I think that the result was great. I mean, we didn't have to do any, how to say it, that everything was as good as the original set firstly made for the show. And as I said, communication with the technical team abroad, and putting them into the position that as a collaborators is the best way to achieve and source things in such a different culture and country as is Brazil and Greece. We're pretty far away, and although because of the job is the same, as I said, theater is one, actually the real differences are not so big.
Thank you, Manolis. Now I call Yuri. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here on this chat. Yara has told you a bit of my story, and before working in Sesky, I used to work in theater puppet company. Was a puppeteer, I think. It was quite delicate work. And when we want to travel and go to other spaces, you have to adapt. Manolis and Hedra said something that has to do with what Cibele Forja said once. She was asked, how do you do for your show to be just as you intended here and there? And she said, it's never the same. It's a different theater, a different space, a different architect, equipment, team. It's a new construction. Of course, there is a line that you have to follow, but there are many nuances that will impact the final result. And also, before working at Sesky, we decided to participate on 2 festivals in Venezuela, and we understood that we were going there without any payment, but because for us it was important to be there. That was 2007. And We did not take luggage, personal luggage, because we wanted to take the scenario on our luggage, because for us it was important to be there participating and going through the country, showing a bit of what we did. And we took many things. We were in many different places, lots of technology, no technology at all, different pieces of equipment, time to set it up. Oftentimes, the time frame was not followed, but there is a public there that has nothing to do with that. Of course, you're not going to give up everything, but there is a public that wants to watch. Oftentimes, they never had contact with this type of show. In 2010, 2011, we also had a tour through Brazil where we would take some part of equipment, not everything. We would take what had to be taken, what was key. And then, as Hedra says, you go from a place that is south and southeast, you go to north and northeast. It's a different reality as far as equipment is concerned. To understand the disavailability of resources that we were talking regarding Brazil, sometimes you think about only about resources in the US, Europe, where you have different brands, but we have to recall that inside our country, the resources available and the labor work is different. The importance of the schools, of what the schools are doing. We, as Manoli said, he took a movie course because it was as close, or cinema because it was as close as lightning as he could find. And we learned a lot from our colleagues that tell us, do this, don't do that. When I started working in 2002, 03, in order to understand about lighting, there were one or two guys who understood that a little bit more. Valmir Pérez has a studio there. And if you wanted to study theater, you have to go into scenic arts, and there's no technical aspects taught. So today we have to value the importance of RSP school, the school that Yara is part of, to understand also a bit of the safety norms. What do I have to do? How do I have to behave there? This is something that impacts directly on our work. And also we have to give value to the work of some companies and representatives of ETC, of to spread the word about some brands to come to the market, Latin American market, to understand that we deserve these technologies here. Yesterday we were talking about the influence of technology. I think technology, when it comes to help, to facilitate our work, it cannot be a hindrance to the main work you are doing, unless if it's something that is one more player in the scene: technology, projection, sound, audio. To understand these brands, Yamaha, Shure, ETC, MA, for the last 5 years, have provided many workshops for free, oftentimes, for us to have a better level, and let us all be on the same page to understand that European market, US market. I'm mentioning that because I think sometimes we have this illusion that they have much more resources. if we don't step aside a reality where the companies are, the brands are, and as Manoli said, and like, if I had 10 days to test my lights, this would be great. I'm so glad that Manolis has this time there, but I don't believe that that's a rule. This adaptability that Manolis and Hedra mentioned and this adequacy today are quite important, especially because of the invasion of the amount of equipment that we have been receiving. It's very good when you have an experience like I had. I worked for 7 years in theater, and I had the possibility of having there the best devices that we could have. Everything was original, well-known brands, ADB, MA, ATC, ITS, Claypark. That's nice, but that's not a reality. This privilege is for few places. So when you have the intention of going around, you have to think about that. Like, I work with Robert Julia, but there I'm going to have ETC. Or I work with ETC, but there I'm only going to have Robert Julia. I work with, I think something that facilitates this adaptation is the 3Ds that lighting companies have been used. I'm going to talk about lighting because that's what I know better or know best. It's nice when these companies introduce 3D and provide us with education. When somebody says you're asking for X and I have Y, and you know that you can change that in a quick way without putting at stake the result or the effect you want. This technical understanding of the equipment is quite important. So when we talk about this time, like, I don't have 10 days. I cannot get there beforehand. Some technologies can be used to facilitate. Of course, unpredictable events will always happen. There are many negotiation steps, like Hedra said, that sometimes we are not aware of. What was promised is one thing, what was negotiated may be something different. And I think the cultural difference that we have in some spaces and places, as Manolis and Hedra said, is that here in Brazil, we mix things a lot. The technician also makes the setup, is a light designer, is the operator. So we really want to look for the final result of what you thought of. And sometimes if you give space for the program, and he might say, I can get to the result you want with this equipment. A few times I worked with companies where the whole team would come, like the tech for lighting, that knows everything he has to do, the operator that knows exactly the timing. Those are the exceptions. Oftentimes, because of cost, we are living through hard times. The director sometimes will operate. The operator will assemble everything, will tune up the reflector, will program the table. I think there are all these differences that we have to think about and work over each reality. An important job, let's say, is the technical producer, technical director. I'm talking about this because I have been on both sides. The person who's there negotiating is one, and the person on the other side will say, I also have this one. And when you have this interface, which is the technical producer and director, things are facilitated because many of them are technicians that became producers or were producers who have technical knowledge. And that facilitates to avoid surprises. among the spaces within the state itself, the country, and abroad. That helps a lot to adjust all that, even for us to understand. I want to take the equipment. I really want to take my equipment because it's key, but it's 50 hertz. It's not going to work to take a 50 hertz equipment. How are we going to make this work if it's extremely necessary? So the director, technical director, producer, who are really concerned with sound, audio, video, with the type of console that's going to be used, is very important because it eliminates 50% of the headache at setup, especially if you have very little time. Oftentimes, these commercial spaces are working with two shows at the same time, and they're going to fit yours in between. Our cultural spaces are, you have to adjust to their timetable because they have different things set up there. How are you going to adapt to that? And you have to think, can I adjust to that? Or will that disable my show? So what we have to do is raise our hands and say how important it is to recognize, to acknowledge these professionals who are dedicated to this. And they're not people who are there to make your show not happen, the other way around. So you have to give up or give in here to serve the other thing, the other side. Equipment is very costly. The more scarce, the more expensive it is. About 6 years ago, one or two companies in Brazil had Robert Julia or Very Light, for instance. So this is a factor that we have to pay attention to when we are going to create. How far is this going to make it difficult or even to disable the setting up of my show? And also, it's very important, whenever possible, to have a technical visit. In this moments that we're living today, I have seen some technical visits being done virtually. So maybe this is something that we will keep for the future. Like, I cannot go there, spend money, but I can be there virtually, looking at the space and checking the size, creating a 3D to think on 13 or 19, my reflector will be better. We have to take this with us. And here, with the technical producers that I had more contact, these people are so open to our opinion. When you are inside a space that you understand what you're talking about, you can say, here, this will not work. We have done it. So, but you can say, yes, it is going to work. Let's test it. How far do we have the opportunity to test things, and how much we don't have time to test, and we have to go to whatever is going to work. Sometimes to use what you already know is the best way out for that. And now I would like to thank the few directors that are here. Sesky, the company where I work today, all technicians can negotiate in a very nice way. They want to make things happen. They belong. They want to add to the team and put the house team with the team that's coming from somewhere else. And these brands and these providers are always available for training sessions. They say, let us make these people understand the possibilities of our equipment. It's not just push a button or program the light. There are many things here that we can negotiate. And I want to thank my partners, Andrea Ball, who has been with us oftentimes. I have worked with him in many shows. Hedra, we have met in some shows too at Sesky. The will to solve has to be larger than creating problems. Sometimes if the Y device is not X, looking for a solution is best. And also other friends who have been partners. This partnership is so important because one hand will think better than two, two will think better than one better, two will think better than one. Well, you understood. So I want to thank Gava and Andrea, Anna, because it's very important to acknowledge people who are doing the work of production, of the technical production, of the technical director. That's so important. And I want to thank some technicians, some company technicians. They help, they give solutions that sometimes we just don't see. So listening is very important. This is what I had to say.
Thank you, Yuri. We have a question for you. For you to talk a little bit about the negotiation processes in the SESC, since you have a diversified demand of production. So how is this negotiation between what is essential and what is adaptable? Could you talk a little bit about, from your point of view, since you're in SESC? Well, Yara, we will never say what is essential and what is not for the artist. I mean, what we have is a conversation with the technicians, with the productions about adaptability. So how far can we negotiate and substitute or replace a Robert Joliat by an ETC? So with SESC, and we are going to talk about privileges like Hedra mentioned, SESC is a privileged place because compared to other commercial venues that have partnerships with equipment companies and rent this equipment, SESC has its own equipment. So we understand that equipment is nice, and that's when we start talking about how much can we adapt, if that effect that you want in a multi-light robot, how much can you have that effect on another piece of equipment? So we understand that when we hire the artist, we do not only hire because of the actors, but because the experience that they bring together with them. And the light effect, the sound effect, the video effect, the intensity, and what that sound expression is going to create in the audience, what the light at that certain moment will create. So what we try to understand really is why that XY equipment does not do the same thing that Z, for example. So we try to analyze that. Of course, we have a lot of red tape, especially considering time. Time is our enemy of everything that we do. And SESC has a policy of creating bids. So we have time to be respected. Sometimes the negotiation is done with the production. which was adapted to Sask's reality. And when you're a month before the premiere, you may not have the time anymore to negotiate all the negotiations that you could have. So that's when we start to say, well, look, you have requested very late, but I have a whole B. You requested a whole B, but I have a clip-on. You've requested a certain angle of reflector and I have another one. So that's the stage when we have these internal negotiations. Each unit has autonomy to negotiate compared to what was agreed before. So that's related to what Hedra mentioned as well. And it's important to highlight as well. Thank you, Yuri. I'm going to ask a question to Manolis. It's a question from the YouTube chat. When do you start, Manolis, to join the creative process? And how much does Dimitri determine of the final result? Does the creation team have room for proposals?
Yes. It's now for how the meetings is working is that we work from the first moment, from the first second that he's starting the new productions. The whole team is together. I mean, me as a technical director, set designers, and probably a sound designer or a musician. So during the first part that I was talking before, during the workshop somehow, there's plenty room for proposals and solutions about the ideas that come to the table. And this is why it's an easy period somehow, because Dimitris knows usually what he wants, and he has a good ability to explain it. During the workshop period, the things are easy and it's easy going, and there is also how do you say it? It's good for us as a technical team also that we get a feedback about the solutions, and it's how to say it, also psychologically good, nice. We get a nice feedback that things for the work that we do. I don't know if I answered the question completely.
Yes, I think so. Thank you. So the next question is for Edra. In any situation that got to the point where the venue situation did not make the production possible. So what is the limit between flexibility and adaptability? Well, the only time in 25 years that we did not have a production was because of excessive rain. And it was funny because it was really my birthday, and I was going to present in a large arena. But in terms of technical issues, I think it's a result of everything that we talked about so far. If it's not possible to do a technical visit, you have to talk, you have to know the venue that you're where you're presenting. So apart from natural issues or energy failure, I've never been to a place where we did not have a previous knowledge of what we were going to find and what we could adapt. I think it's worth mentioning that it's about the understanding of the importance of presenting, because when you really want to do it in a venue, you end up saying to other people that you accept anything, and sometimes you get a fame that you would do anything. That's not the case. So if you have the resources so that show is presented, then do it. If you do not have the resources, then the decision is up to their own, so that you do not so that you're not blacklisted, so to speak. So I'm in favor of creating the resources, and when there's no resource at all, it's a collective decision. It's not my single decision. So I'm going to sit down with my company. We'll say, oh, this and that is not possible at this venue. Is it important for us? Is it not? And how far are we willing to go? And solving the problem is also a collective decision, because the scenery will change. There are a lot of people involved, also to prevent any accidents. So there are negotiations to get to this point, considering the conditions that you have. So this previous negotiation is really important, both on the technical director side, but also on the artist side. And yeah, there are places that we got there. We know the protocol. If there's a show with a lot of movement between the stage and the audience. We were in Costa Rica one time, and there was a ditch of a 3-meter ditch between the audience and the stage with 2 bridges. So we spent 2 weeks talking about it, how we're going to solve that. So everything that we talked about the previous negotiation is fundamental. And I also agree with Yuri. From my experience, a few times you would walk into a theater and the whole technical team is willing for that to happen. So this type of dialogue, so to speak, it's a codependence. You need those people from the venue so that everything happens. It's a human relationship above all. It's above equipment and conditions. Sometimes it's people that are working there have been working there for 20 years, that they know every inch of the stage floor, every nail, so you cannot ignore that. You have to understand all the relationships that happen there. Who is the boss? Who is the leader? Who you start talking to? Who do you invite for a cup of coffee or a beer to, it's a human relationship there. And that is success to me. Of course, equipment is important, but above all, the human relations and who is going to help you. The scenery fell down, collapsed, and one guy from the background just came up and said, I'm gonna help you. Let's rebuild this. Yes, it's very interesting to hear all those stories. Manolis is right when he says when we are a type of country in the theater culture in the theater. I see myself in your speeches, and negotiation was mentioned by all of you, how that is important, how you negotiate in the venue, the importance of the knowledge of the scene, the importance of the scene, and how it can be displayed and how it can be operated beyond the materials. What is the essence of that scene, of the feelings, the atmosphere that it builds, and how important that is during negotiations. So different venues, different places with different cultures. And there's also one important thing, which are the exchanges. Everyone also mentioned that. So you have to listen to that person working in the venue, who understands the culture of the venue, every inch, like Hedra just mentioned. We have one more question, and the question is the following. In case of risk evaluation and safety, do norms and regulations in different countries, because we have countries and places that have specific regulations, have they already created serious problems for you? The question goes for every one of you. So Hedra first, please. I would just like to tell you a funny story, because we start remembering things, right? Your story and everywhere that you've been. In Germany, there was a show. I sang on a metal structure, and on the day, it was difficult. The ship was delayed. Everything was unassembled. We had to assemble everything by ourselves. So on the first day, there was that crossed line around the metal structure. So they had to let the audience know. And before noon, they said that the safety cables that we were using were not standard. So it was not possible in that venue. And that after 3 days of construction. So and then the production just said, okay, so just change the cables. And that's what they did. So that's how we adapt, really. And you see things that create problems you didn't know, but then you negotiate. That's how you do. And for example, in our show, they distributed the earplugs because they said it was too noisy. And this type of thing, you know, things you didn't know or you weren't aware of. And there's always going to be something you did not research as thoroughly, people that didn't tell you in advance, and we try to solve it in the best way possible.
Yes, risk and safety regulations are always present, mostly in Europe and USA, as far as I've seen. And Germany is definitely a country where there are always some kind of issues. Although when the people that host you, the venue or the festival is really determined to do the show, there's always a solution that can be found. For example, many times we carry with us some handmade lights that they're not, they don't have some kind of safety tab, or we just made it. We constructed them during the creation, and there were some times that we have problems that this has no, it's not safe to be on stage, for example, or something like that. But we always come with a solution that the venue itself can secure that it's okay. We make some measurements or that, or some rigging equipment that we had before. It's not has no sign on it, so the venue gives us some equipment, or we have to go and buy it somewhere that has the standard that the venue or the country needs actually. But as we said before, if we want to make it happen, there's always a way around some regulations with the help of the local crew and the production team. So it's not actually maybe putting a couple of difficulties, but there's always a way around or having them. So they were never a reason not for a show not to happen or for a part of the show not to happen. We found a way together with the local crew to overcome them, or even before arriving, through communication that we have this on the show. Oh, what is this? It has to has this standard, so we try to keep up with it.
We never had much safety problem, because something that's nice, as I said about the producer, the director, they explain what each one has to use and so on and so forth. But the few experiences that we had, the example, when you are setting up the light and you have a helmet, you have your PPI, it generates this feeling that why is everybody using it and I will not use it. And we have to explain and show people who are there participating, well, if you want to participate of this, you have to use the PPE. You need the belt, the safety belt, the helmet. We try to do that. It's like the mask. Everybody's wearing a mask. Why am I not wearing a mask? So I will. The example is everything. I had little contact with companies that would generate any safety discomfort. There was one Polish company that we worked with that they would wear sandals and short pants all day long. It was a very heavy structure that they had to set up, and it would fall. And goodness, I kept thinking something very serious is going to happen here. We had a production. We did not want to argue with them, but we explained that here you are getting to somebody else's house, you are invited to come in. So each place has a rule. There are places that you go to, and I was the technician. I knew what to do, but I could not climb there to do whatever I had to do. So you have to respect it. What avoids problems with equipment and safety norms is a well-done timetable. We have to understand what can I do here or can I not. That facilitates a lot. One last question. We have 15 more minutes. Actually, I wanted you to go further on the importance of time, of knowledge. Of the internals of the work, the atmosphere, what Hedra said, that at the end, if nothing goes right, she can put back on track. That has to do with timing, with understanding the importance of precision, of entering the places. I would like you to talk a little bit more about that, about the importance of this understanding of the scene, of the feelings in the scene, on this relation with adaptation. Hedra or whoever wants to say something. I think that my case is quite specific. I come from inside the company, and lighting arises from a need that somebody that was researching had to solve the lighting and had knowledge of the show and could interact with it somehow. Few times we had the chance of having a specialist in light following the process for a year. There was a time where we had no place to rehearse. We had few opportunities to rehearse in theaters. And to have everything at my disposal. This is where we decided that we were going to find solutions and put it into the scene. So I work with this hypothesis that the operation will allow dramaturgy. And this is in talks and workshops, this is what I try to convey, to make the operator be an extension of the show. I believe a lot in the technician as performer. I don't believe things are separated. We need more training for that. It's important to understand technique and technology, what are the possibilities, but sometimes there is a lack of this training with the scene itself. It should be the other way around. From your needs, you should develop that technical knowledge in an organic way. I'm very sad when I have all the equipment and who's going to operate it is somebody who's going to operate everything that goes on there. So I think it has to be more organic, and that's where I come from. I was born on this way of thinking. So maybe I would not be too good to answer that because I am inside that somehow.
If I understood correctly, you just want to talk a bit more on adaptability. Am I correct?
And in the relation with the knowledge of the scene to knowing deeply the scene and the importance of each element.
Yes, to know. You mean to know the work that has to be done, your show, and your job on that, and what the artists want to achieve. Yes, of course. This is what we do. This is our job. I mean, even from the beginning of every new piece, we try to actually adapt what's on the mind of the artist to the reality. So when we change an environment or we change equipment type, we just readapt this first solution that we thought of to the new elements and to the new things that we have to work with. Of course, I agree with Hydra that all the technicians behind the scene or behind the control desks are also part of the show, of course, and they give their own pace and their own soul into it. We don't all move the faders in the same way. Yes, of course, knowing your job and the set and your stage is the first thing that we have to do. And the only this is why I was so this is why I thought I said that the communication is very important between the artistic team and the technical team, so that we can understand better what is it that we want to achieve on stage.
Thank you, Yuri. So before working with the artists as a technician at the SESC, I was part of a company. So I started carrying scenography, and then painting the scenery. I watched the rehearsals. And then one day the sound operator was missing and the lighting operator was missing. So you start thinking of what you could suggest in the creative process. We were heard as well. Sometimes your voice is not heard in some places, but when you present your opinions as a light designer, as an artist who is integrated with the team, and where you can suggest things, and that you realize that because of the rhythm of the scene, the actor delayed a little bit to come in, and then you delay the focus a little bit, and you're integrated and living that experience together. So that's a whole different thing. So you start, for example, using a different resource like Hedra mentioned. So if the musician plays that specific note, you can trigger that effect. Sometimes that is valid depending on what you're doing. But if you have a few things at hand, and if you have that live experience, especially considering that you're in a different venue, living a different experience, so it's not just sitting behind the control table. It's an exchange of culture. Sometimes you go to places where people do not have access to what you're doing, and that really generates an exchange that is very interesting. So when you're open to that, sometimes I recorded some light effects, and I kept that at hand because I knew that that type of focus I wanted to light up at that moment, because the artist sometimes turns left or turns right depending on the day. The artist on the stage does not go all the time by the markings. They have their freedom as well. So you have to experience that exchange together. And as far as adaptability goes, we know what the director wants from us, what we wanted to do, and we know that if we open more here or there, it's not going to interfere that much. But the essence, the idea, is their presence. Thank you. We're moving on to the end of our panel. So I'm going to give you the floor now so that you can say your final words. Well, I'm the starter every single time. Well, I just wanted to thank you all for inviting me again. I'm really a person that I rarely accept invitations for this type of thing. This is really an exercise for me. living a moment that this type of experience is the only place to exchange and have that taste of the pre-coronavirus period. So I thank you very much for the invitation. Would like to thank Andre Ball. He's an example for me. I see him as, treating people well, trying to solve their problems, helping people with no discrimination about, where you came from, what's your company. That was always an example. I've never told you, Andre, that before, I think. Thank you very much. And just really say that as far as possible, I would like to remain a professional with ethics and technical knowledge to try to give different possibilities around the world, because art is really the only place that we have to think about other worlds and other possible forms of existence in such a cruel time of life that we're living, especially in Brazil. Thank you very much again. Manolis, the floor is yours.
So I want to thank you all also for inviting me, and also Andre, that is the only one I know also personally. We work together. I hope that this was a real meeting and not through the internet. It would be much more interesting, I think. It's some things cannot be replaced, no matter how good connection we have. I like very much being here and meeting you all and hearing your ideas and thoughts. I just hope we meet again in real, in person. Thank you very much.
Yuri, you're up now. Well, thank you very much again, Andre. Like Hedra said, he's such a dear friend. We have to meet in person, just like Manoli said. It would be beautiful if we could be together in person to see people and exchange experiences and feel people. That is very important. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Cena Brasil Aberta. I'm honored to be here and to share a little bit of what I have lived. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with Manolis, Hedra, Yara, and I'm here whenever you want to talk, exchange ideas, just get in touch with me. You have my Facebook address, Instagram, and whatever we are able to contribute, I'm there for you guys. So thank you everyone again. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and to be the mediator of this panel. I would like to give the floor to Andre now for his final considerations and wrap up our panel. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again very soon, and especially if it's in person. Thank you. Stay well, stay safe. Thank you, Yara, Hedra, Yuri, Manolis. I'm really touched right now. I know that you're speaking from different places, both geographically, and also each one of you have different cultures and different roles, but each and every one of you, Hedra, you speak about your shyness, but you said beautiful things, and it's amazing how much we learn in these exchanges. So the opportunity to listen to you and hear from the different places that you're talking from gives us food for thought. These technical meetings were planned before the pandemic. So we have to pay attention when we talk about technical. We're just putting in the box. So the artist in the box, the idea is to permeate technical and artists. We're all people with our specificities, with our talents and capabilities, and we work together with a shared goal. So thank you so much for your availability, for being here. Thank you, Sesk, for sharing Yuri with us. Manolas is during his construction work. Yara. And I would like to remind everyone that we have Gonzalo's workshop this afternoon. It's going to be very interesting. And Yara's workshop tomorrow afternoon. So sign up. And Brasil Cena Aberta team, it was a challenge and a resistance act to put up this event, especially considering our political context. And so thank you very much again, everyone.